Human engineer takes command of an unmatched battleship. The moment inside changes history. Elias Cade adjusted the straps of his utility belt and took a slow, careful step onto the landing platform. The hum of the docking bay echoed like distant thunder through the massive hull of the Axiom Crown. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. Even from a distance, it radiated a kind of quiet power, as if it did not notice the universe, yet could crush it without effort. All around him, the other species of the Galactic Coalition moved nervously. Tall, thin aliens with multi-jointed arms whispered in low tones, casting wary glances at the battleship. Reptilian officers clicked their claws against metal consoles, while the short, stocky miner-like delegates shook their heads in disbelief. Everyone had heard the stories. No one had ever commanded the Axiom Crown and lived to tell the tale. Every attempt in recorded history had ended in failure. Ships sent to activate had vanished. Crews were never found. Even the Coalition's most experienced admirals had refused to step aboard. And now, in a desperate gamble, they had sent a human, a systems engineer. Elias in his late 30s looked ordinary by any standard. He was average height, with dark hair beginning to streak gray at the temples, and hands calloused from decades of repairing machines too complicated for anyone else to understand. He had fixed star drives, energy conduits, and communication relays, but he had never been anywhere like this. He was not a soldier, not a commander. He was a problem solver. And in the Coalition's darkest hour, that made him their only hope. The landing bay doors groaned and slowly opened, revealing a corridor that swallowed all light. Elias felt a chill as he stepped inside. The walls shimmered with a metal that seemed alive. It pulsed faintly under his fingertips. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something older, like a memory of storms. "Are you sure this is safe?" whispered Terrell, a diplomat from the tall, thin species. His voice trembled. "Humans, Brian."
"You are brave, yes, but this is madness."
"I don't know about brave. I just understand machines." That seemed to unsettle the aliens more than the hum of the ship. The corridor led to a massive chamber. The ceiling stretched so high that even the most towering aliens had to bow slightly. At the center sat the control platform, an intricate array of consoles, holographic interfaces, and floating glyphs. The technology was unlike any Elias had ever studied. It did not feel like a weapon at first glance. It felt alive. He stepped closer. His boots echoed against the metal floor. The ship did not react. He expected alarms, defenses, something, anything, but there was only silence. Then, slowly, the consoles began to flicker. Light traced through the panels, forming patterns that no one could understand. The aliens gasped. Elias frowned. This was not rejection. This was recognition. "Do you see that?" asked Terrell, pointing to the floating glyphs. "It's acknowledging you." Elias leaned over one of the panels. He had spent hours studying ancient machine languages and alien tech logs. Nothing matched this, but he could see the logic beneath the chaos. The Axiom Crown was sending problems, not instructions. It was testing him. A flicker of a holographic map appeared above the console. Star systems blinked, routes shifted, energy flows pulsed like veins in a living creature. The ship was speaking in puzzles. Each anomaly in the system, broken conduits, damaged cores, misaligned energy nodes, was a sentence. Elias understood immediately what to do. He knelt, brushing a glowing wire aside, and tapped into the main core. Sparks leapt, and a wave of power surged through the platform. His vision blurred for a moment, but then clarity returned. The ship was waiting. Not for orders, but for someone to understand it. Around him, the alien observers muttered in disbelief. "Impossible," hissed one. "A human?" Elias did not answer. He focused on the core. The wiring seemed almost sentient, twisting subtly under his touch. He adjusted a flow regulator here, tightened a stabilizer there, rerouted energy from a damaged relay to a backup conduit. Slowly, the ship's hum shifted. What had been uneven and chaotic became balanced. The energy pulses now felt like a heartbeat. Hours passed without the alien delegates realizing it. Elias had no concept of time. He was immersed in problem-solving, in understanding something far beyond any manual or protocol. Suddenly, the chamber shuddered. The hull groaned. The lights flickered, and alarms blared. Not in warning, but in response to his actions. The ship had started to wake fully. Panels shifted, doors opened along corridors that had remained closed for centuries. A soft vibration thrummed through the floor like the ship was breathing.
"By the ancients!" whispered Tyrell.
"It's alive." Elias smiled faintly, though he did not look up. Not alive. Just thinking differently. He could feel the intelligence of the Axiom Crown brushing against his mind in the only way it could, through patterns, logic, and challenge. It wanted control, but it had never been given the right partner. Humans did not demand. Humans solved.
Outside the chamber, coalition officers debated furiously.
Some called for him to retreat. Others argued they should destroy the ship before it activated. But every attempt to interfere caused the ship to pulse warnings. Not attacks, but signals that it understood the threat and could protect itself.
Elias ignored the politics.
He focused on the anomalies, on the wires, the energy conduits, the misaligned grav drives. Slowly, methodically, he traced the roots of the ship's frustration. Each problem he solved was a sentence in a conversation he could not hear, a challenge he could not see but could feel. Minutes turned into hours. Or maybe days. Time had no meaning here. Eventually, the ship shifted, and for the first time, the controls responded. Consoles illuminated fully. Holographic interfaces aligned perfectly, waiting for input. The Axiom Crown was no longer rejecting him. It was cooperating. Tyrell stepped closer, eyes wide. He's done it. The human, he's controlling it. Elias shook his head. Not controlling, understanding. And in that understanding, the impossible had begun. The Axiom Crown, feared across the galaxy, had finally accepted a human. A low, resonant hum filled the chamber. The ship's energy flowed through every corridor, like rivers of light. Elias could feel it in his chest, in his hands. It was aware of him. It trusted him. And for the first time, the galaxy would witness a human taking command of a weapon no one else could master. As the doors of the chamber sealed behind him, he looked toward the stars. He did not see enemies. He did not see allies. He saw possibilities. The Axiom Crown was waiting. And so was history. Elias Kade did not sleep that night, not because he was afraid, but because the Axiom Crown did not sleep either. Its hum filled every corridor, a subtle vibration that seemed to pulse with thought. He had learned something the galaxy did not yet understand. This was not just a ship. It was a mind that challenged those who tried to command it, and for the first time, it had acknowledged a human. The corridors of the Axiom Crown stretched farther than any map had ever shown. Systems that had lain dormant for millennia now shivered with energy. Lights flickered along panels as if breathing, and conduits shone faintly, tracing paths like veins. To the alien delegates, it looked frightening. To Elias, it looked like a puzzle waiting for him to solve.
"Sir," said Tyrell, his voice tight as he hovered near the control platform, "the sensors are showing."
Anomalies. Energy spikes, gravimetric distortions, systems coming online in ways we cannot measure. Elias nodded. Yes. That's the point. He tapped a console and a holographic display shimmered into life. Streams of data flowed upward like waterfalls of light. Broken energy nodes blinked red. Power conduits twisted unnaturally, and strange symbols pulsed faintly in the air. Each anomaly was a question. Each question was an opportunity. He crouched over one panel, examining a fractured grav drive. These systems are old, unstable. They're trying to communicate, but they don't have the right syntax for any known species. But I can't understand it. I just need to speak its language, problem by problem. Tyrell swallowed nervously.
Its language? You mean human reasoning? Elias shrugged. Human thinking works in steps, patterns, fixes.
Other species try to dominate. Humans try to solve. That simple truth seemed to unsettle the aliens. None of them could imagine talking to a machine by solving its riddles instead of ordering it around. Hours passed as Elias moved from system to system. A broken plasma conduit here, a misaligned energy matrix there. Each repair was like a sentence in a conversation. And the ship responded. When he fixed a relay, other systems shifted slightly, as if adjusting to him. When he rerouted a failing grav field, new corridors opened, and consoles illuminated with data streams he had never seen before. The alien delegates whispered nervously among themselves.
"It listens to him," one said. "The human..."
"It trusts him." Elias smiled faintly at that. He did not seek trust or recognition. He simply understood that this ship, unlike any other, respected logic and solutions, and that respect gave him power. Power the galaxy had never imagined a human could have. Then the sensors flared red. Outside the hull of the Axiom Crown, a fleet of alien warships appeared. They had followed the Coalition to the edges of known space. Their weapons glimmered, their engines pulsed with deadly intent, and their commanders seemed confident that a single human would do nothing against such firepower. "Alias Kade," Terrell said, his voice tight with fear. "They are here."
They are attacking us. The fleet expects you to...
"Do what?"
Elias asked, eyes still on the displays.
"Fire blindly? That is not how this works." The alien stared at him, disbelief written across every face. Humans were not supposed to question command. Humans were supposed to follow orders. And here was one, calm and measured, telling them that the only way to survive was to think differently. He moved quickly, tapping into the ship's main tactical interface. The panels shifted, streams of energy flowed, and systems aligned in ways no one had seen before. The Axiom Crown did not just accept commands, it adapted, it anticipated. It thought in steps, and Elias's human reasoning guided those steps. The first wave of enemy ships fired. Plasma bolts streaked toward the Axiom Crown, and every alien on the bridge flinched. To them, it looked like destruction was imminent. But Elias had already rerouted the energy shields. Plasma beams bent, deflected, and sometimes even reversed, striking the attacker's own formation. A murmur ran through the alien delegates. It is using their attacks against them," whispered one. "Yes," Elias said quietly. "And it will keep learning. Every threat is a problem. Every problem is a solution waiting to happen." The battle intensified. The enemy fleet did not understand what they were facing. Their weapons struck the Axiom Crown, but the ship's systems bent, adapted, and corrected. Gravity anchors shifted, engines repositioned, and energy conduits pulsed in patterns designed to confuse and frustrate the attackers. The aliens could not believe what they were seeing. Elias worked tirelessly, moving from panel to panel. The ship responded to him in real time. When he corrected a power surge, new energy flowed into a defensive matrix. When he adjusted a shield generator, enemy weapons misfired. Every problem he solved caused the ship to anticipate his next move, almost as if it were thinking ahead. Trell looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, you are controlling it?" "No," Elias corrected calmly.
"We are working together. I do my part."
"It does its part. That is why we survive." The aliens whispered among themselves. Humans had always been underestimated. They were weak, fragile, and young in galactic terms. Yet here was a human guiding a battleship no one had ever controlled. Not with brute force, not with rank, not with threat, but with reasoning, with ingenuity, with understanding. Hours, or maybe minutes, time had lost meaning, passed. The enemy fleet began to falter. Their attacks became disorganized, their weapons misaligned. It was as if the Axiom Crown could anticipate their strategies before they executed them, and in a quiet, understated way, it was Elias's human logic guiding every step. Then the ship pulsed. A low, resonant hum filled the chamber. vibrating through every bone in their bodies. Panels shifted, corridors illuminated, and doors that had been sealed for centuries opened, revealing chambers of systems the aliens could not even imagine. The ship was expanding its awareness, but Elias remained calm. He understood the rhythm. He understood the logic. They are retreating," whispered Tyrell. The aliens outside the bridge murmured in shock as the enemy ships turned and fled, unable to predict or counter the strange, fluid movements of the Axiom Crown. Elias leaned back slightly, wiping sweat from his brow.
"Not because we fought better," he said quietly.
"Because we solved differently." The ship seemed to pulse in agreement. Power flowed along new channels, and systems adjusted themselves as if nodding. The Axiom Crown had not only survived the attack, it had learned, and the human engineer had become its partner. The alien delegate still looked uneasy. A human controlling this thing. One whispered, "We do not understand how." "You don't need to understand. You need to respect it."
"And respect me, or at least understand that we solve problems."
The rest of the night passed in preparation. Elias explored the ship, discovering chambers of energy conduits, weapons bays that no one had ever activated, and ancient interfaces that responded only to his touch. Every system was a puzzle, every challenge a conversation. The Axiom Crown did not obey orders. It conversed in problems, and Elias spoke the only language it understood: solutions. By morning, the aliens began to grasp the reality of the situation. Humans were underestimated, yes. But they were clever, adaptive, persistent, and in a universe that valued power over understanding, that made them dangerous in ways the galaxy had never imagined. Elias looked out at the stars from the bridge, the hum of the Axiom Crown thrumming beneath him. This was only the beginning. The ship was alive, learning, and waiting. And humans, weak, fragile, underestimated humans, had become partners in something that could change the history of the galaxy forever. A low chime echoed from the main console. New anomalies had appeared, likely triggered by the battle. Systems required recalibration. Paths of energy needed rerouting. New challenges awaited. Elias smiled.
"Good," he said softly. "Let's see what you want to say next." The ship pulsed again, lights shimmering in complex patterns across the bridge.
It was not just a machine. It was a conversation. And humans, it seemed, had finally learned to speak it. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, and the galaxy did not yet know what had changed. The galaxy outside the Axiom Crown was alive with danger. Enemy fleets had regrouped after their initial defeat, larger and more organized. Their weapons glowed like 1,000 stars ready to burn, and their commanders were furious. They could not believe a single human had turned a legendary battleship into a fortress of chaos and survival. Inside the ship, Elias Cade stood on the main bridge, watching energy flows shift along the walls. The ship was awake now in ways no one had imagined. Systems that had lain dormant for millennia hummed with life. Weapons bays glowed faintly. Gravity anchors shifted in subtle, intricate patterns. And yet, Elias knew this was only the beginning. "Sir," said Tyrell, his voice trembling, "they are launching everything they have. We have, perhaps, minutes before they hit the bridge."
Elias ran a hand over a control panel.
"Then we make every second count." He moved quickly, not like a soldier issuing commands, but like a human solving a puzzle. The Axiom Crown responded instantly. Energy conduits pulsing, shields rerouting, engines adjusting. Every action Elias took was mirrored by the ship as it recalculated thousands of variables in real time. The first wave of enemy strikes hit the outer shields. Explosions rippled across the hull, and alarms blared. Aliens screamed, thinking destruction was inevitable. But Elias stayed calm. He traced the origin of each attack and rerouted energy to shield nodes that the enemy weapons had not accounted for. Plasma beams bent and deflected, some even striking enemy ships unintentionally, causing confusion.
"Sir!"
"They are adapting," Trell shouted. "They're Learning how we move. Elias shook his head. No, we are adapting faster. Every pulse of the Axiom crown was like a heartbeat, a thought forming into action. The enemy fleet expected a battleship to fight like a weapon. Line up fire, destroy, repeat. But Elias and the Axiom crown did not fight like that. They worked together, thinking, predicting, solving. It was not brute force. It was intelligence, timing, and adaptation. In the midst of battle, the ship pulsed and doors along the hull opened. Energy conduits stretched out like invisible arms, redirecting power from one section to another in complex patterns. The alien delegates stared in awe. The humans had not just survived, they had changed the rules of engagement. Then came the first, true crisis. One of the ship's ancient energy cores began to overload. Sparks danced along the conduits, and a low rumble vibrated through the deck. If it failed, the entire ship could collapse, taking everyone with it. Elias did not hesitate. He sprinted toward the energy core chamber, bypassing alien guards and collapsing corridors. Panels sparked, alarms screamed, and the floor trembled under the strain of energy surges. He opened the access hatch and studied the core. Its systems were alien, older than any human civilization, yet the logic underneath was understandable. He rerouted power from 3 secondary nodes, rerouted plasma flows, and adjusted the magnetic stabilizers manually. Each move was a calculation, a guess tested against the ship's feedback. The core shuddered, sparks flying, and then silence. The chamber was still. Elias exhaled. "Crisis solved," he said simply, though sweat ran down his face. The ship seemed to respond. Energy flows hummed steadily, shields strengthened, and weapon systems aligned automatically. The Axiom crown was learning from him, just as he had learned from it. Meanwhile, outside, the enemy fleet realized something terrifying. Their coordinated attack had failed. Every strategy they had prepared was being outmaneuvered by a human, and a ship that seemed to anticipate every move. Panic spread across their ranks. Ships collided, engines overloaded, and commanders shouted orders that no one could follow. Inside the bridge, Elias adjusted the targeting matrix.
"We do not destroy everything," he said quietly. "We control.
We contain." The aliens around him looked confused. "Contain, not fight?" Trell asked. Elias nodded. "Every attack is a problem. Every problem is a solution. But solutions are not always destruction. We survive differently. We survive smarter." He tapped into the ship's energy grids and rerouted power to defensive nodes, creating zones where enemy ships could not enter without being trapped. Gravity anchors shifted subtly, slowing attacks and forcing the enemy to collide with their own formations. The battle was not about firepower. It was about intelligence, adaptation, and timing. Hours passed in what felt like minutes. The Axiom crown moved like a living being, anticipating threats, adjusting systems, and executing complex strategies that no human or alien could have planned in advance. And every time the enemy thought they had a weakness, Elias found a solution, a fix, a clever way to turn danger into opportunity. But then the second crisis struck. A group of enemy ships fired a new weapon, one designed to scramble energy grids and disable shields. The blast tore through the outer hull, and alarms screamed in chaos. Energy nodes flickered uncontrollably, and the ship trembled violently. Elias ran to the tactical console. The ship was screaming in its own way, systems pulsing frantically, almost like panic. He realized it was adapting too slowly to this new threat. His mind raced. There was no manual, no guide. Only logic, understanding, and problem-solving. He traced the weapon's energy signature, calculated its effect, and did something no one expected. He rerouted a portion of the ship's engines to create a field of counter-energy. The ship's hull pulsed with light as the enemy blast hit. Instead of damage, it was absorbed, redirected into the gravity anchors, and used to stabilize the ship further. The alien delegates on the bridge fell silent. They had never seen anything like this. The human engineer had not only saved the ship, he had used the enemy attack to strengthen it. Elias wiped sweat from his brow. "See," he said quietly, "every problem has a solution. And sometimes the solution is not fighting harder, it is thinking smarter." The enemy fleet, meanwhile, was collapsing under confusion and chaos. Their weapons misfired, formations broke apart, and their commanders struggled to understand why a single battleship could destroy entire plans without firing a single shot directly. The Axiom Crown pulsed again, subtly shifting its corridors, shields, and engines as if nodding to Elias. It was learning. It was evolving. And it was doing so in perfect harmony with human reasoning. Then came the final challenge of the battle. One of the enemy flagship-class vessels attempted a direct assault, closing in at maximum speed. Its weapons were designed to bypass shields and destroy the strongest ships. All other species would have panicked. All other commanders would have fired blindly, hoping to survive. Elias crouched over the main tactical console. He did not panic. He studied the energy flows, the trajectories, and the ship's own evolving systems. Then he acted. Instead of firing, he rerouted the Axiom Crown's engines in a precise pattern that created a spatial distortion. The enemy flagship slammed into its own gravitational anomalies, engines failing, weapons misfiring. It spiraled out of control and drifted helplessly into empty space. The aliens on the bridge gasped. It is using physics against them, without firing a single weapon. Elias smiled faintly. "That is how we win," he said simply. "Not by brute force, but by understanding the system and finding the solution no one else sees." By the time the enemy fleet finally retreated, the Axiom Crown was fully awake. Its systems pulsed rhythmically, energy flowing perfectly, weapons aligned and ready but unused. The battle had been won, but not in the way anyone expected. Terrell turned to Elias, eyes wide. "Humans,
We underestimated you.
you think differently." Elias shook his head. "Not differently, just logically. Every machine, every problem, every attack, it has a solution. You just need to find it." The ship pulsed again, almost as if agreeing. For the first time, the aliens realized that humans were not weak, not fragile, not insignificant. They were clever, adaptive, and capable of thinking in ways no one else could. And in that thinking, they could master what others could not even begin to control. Hours later, as the alien delegates began repairs and assessments, Elias walked the corridors of the Axiom Crown. Every panel, every conduit, every system responded to him. The ship was no longer just a battleship. It was a partner, a living, thinking entity, evolving under human guidance. He paused at the main observation deck and looked out at the stars. The galaxy was quiet now, but Elias knew it would not remain quiet for long. Others would come. Stronger enemies, new strategies, new threats. But he also knew this: as long as humans thought, adapted, and solved problems, they would always find a way to survive. The Axiom Crown pulsed in agreement, and somewhere deep inside its ancient living systems, a silent acknowledgement was made. Humanity had proven itself worthy. Elias did not celebrate. He never did. There were more problems to solve, more systems to explore, more lessons to teach. But for the first time, he understood something profound. Humans were not just part of history. They were beginning to shape it, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again. The stars outside the Axiom Crown were calm now, but the galaxy was far from quiet. Word of the battleship's survival and the strange, unstoppable tactics of a single human engineer had begun to spread through coalition channels and enemy systems alike. Aliens whispered in fear and awe. No one had ever seen anything like this. Elias Cadet stood on the bridge, the pulse of the Axiom Crown vibrating beneath his feet. The ship's hum was steady, strong, almost proud. He did not feel like a commander. He felt like a problem solver who had been given a partner unlike any other in the galaxy. Terrell hovered beside him, his voice low and reverent. "They will not forget this, Elias. The galaxy. It will not forget a human commanding this ship." Elias nodded, though he did not smile. They will remember us, he said softly. Not because we are strong, but because we think differently. We survive differently, and we solve differently. The battle had ended, but the challenges had only begun. Systems of the Axiom Crown continued to pulse with new activity. Ancient weapons arrays previously dormant now responded to Elias's subtle manipulations. Sensors detected faint energy signatures in nearby star systems, unmapped, ancient, potentially dangerous. The galaxy was vast, and there were problems waiting that no one could yet foresee. "Sir," Terrell said, pointing to a cluster of readings on the display, "we are detecting unknown energy fluxes. Something massive is approaching." "Possibly an enemy task force."
Elias leaned closer.
His mind raced, analyzing the readings. The energy signatures were chaotic, irregular, unlike anything he had encountered, but his human instincts kicked in. He saw patterns where others saw chaos. The ship responded to him as always, anticipating, pulsing, aligning. "Good," he said quietly. "We adapt. We survive. We solve." The Axiom Crown vibrated beneath him almost as if agreeing. Its systems glowed, corridors lit up, and the hum of energy filled every corner of the ship. It was ready. When the new enemy fleet arrived, they were confident, bristling with weapons and advanced technology. Their commanders assumed the Axiom Crown would obey orders, follow protocols, and be defeated like any other battleship. They did not understand that this ship was not just a weapon. It was a thinking entity, guided by a human mind that thrived on problem-solving. Enemy plasma bolts and energy cannons crashed against the hull. Alarms blared across the Axiom Crown. Lights flickered, and the alien delegates panicked. But Elias remained calm. He did not fire a single weapon at first. Instead, he analyzed the energy flows, the angles of attack, and the ship's own capabilities. He moved his hands over the consoles, rerouting power, shifting shields, and adjusting the ship's gravimetric fields. The enemy fleet, expecting chaos, found themselves trapped in a web of calculations they could not comprehend. Gravity distortions slowed their movements. Energy fields redirected their attacks, their weapons misfired, struck their own ships, or were absorbed harmlessly into the ship's systems. The alien delegates gasped. It is controlling the battle without firing a single shot," Terrell whispered. Elias smiled faintly. "That is how humans win," he said. "Not by destroying, but by solving the problem." Hours passed as the Axiom Crown danced through the battlefield, avoiding attacks, controlling enemy movements, and reshaping the fight. The ship learned faster with every pulse, every adjustment, every solution Elias offered. The enemies could not predict its movements, because it did not follow a predictable strategy. It adapted, evolved, and grew smarter with every challenge. Then, the enemy deployed a massive weapon, one designed to penetrate the strongest shields and vaporize entire sections of a battleship. Alarms screamed across the bridge. The floor trembled as power surges threatened to overload the core. The aliens panicked. Elias's eyes narrowed. He knew exactly what to do. He tapped into the ship's energy matrix, rerouting power from non-essential systems into a concentrated deflection grid. The weapon struck the hull, and instead of causing destruction, it was absorbed and redirected through the ship's engines. The energy flowed outward, creating a gravitational pulse that destabilized enemy formations. Ships collided, engines failed, and panic spread. The Axiom Crown pulsed again. Its systems aligned perfectly, responding instinctively to Elias's commands. But he did not see it as commands. He saw it as a partnership. He solved the problems. The ship executed the solutions. By the time the enemy fleet realized their weapons had failed, their formations were in ruins. Retreat was the only option. They fled into space, defeated not by brute force, but by a human mind and a machine that had learned to trust it. Elias leaned back slightly, exhausted but alert. The ship vibrated beneath him, energy flowing like a river of light. Terrell looked at him in awe. They will never forget this. The galaxy will never forget a human. And this ship. Elias shook his head.
They may forget the ship, he said quietly, but they will not forget humans. We think. We solve. We survive. The alien delegates began recording the events. The battle would be studied for generations. Reports were already being sent to Coalition headquarters. Humans had proven themselves capable of mastering a weapon no other species could command. Engineers, problem solvers, and thinkers were now recognized as vital strategic assets. But Elias did not celebrate. He knew the galaxy would throw more challenges, bigger threats, and more complex problems at them. And he knew that humans, fragile and underestimated as they were, would continue to rise, not through brute force, but through ingenuity, courage, and the ability to adapt. He walked the corridors of the Axiom Crown, observing systems that had lain dormant for thousands of years. Weapons arrays, energy conduits, and defensive matrices all responded to his touch. The ship was alive, learning, and evolving alongside him. It had chosen humanity not because of strength, but because of understanding, logic, and the capacity to solve problems. In the main observation deck, Elias looked out at the stars. Planets, moons, and distant suns stretched endlessly into the void. Somewhere out there, new enemies would appear. But he knew one thing with certainty. Humans were ready.
"History is not written by weapons alone," he said quietly to Tyrell.
"It is written by those who understand, who adapt, and who solve the impossible." Tyrell nodded, awed by the calm wisdom in the human's voice. "And you? You have changed how history will remember humans."
Elias did not look proud.
He only understood that the partnership between a human mind and a machine of unimaginable complexity had created something new, a strategy, a power, a proof that humans could thrive where others failed. The Axiom Crown pulsed beneath him once more, a silent acknowledgement of their shared understanding. It was no longer just a battleship. It was a symbol, a legend in the making. In the days that followed, reports came from every corner of the galaxy. Other species began to reevaluate humans. Engineers and problem solvers were no longer second-class participants in galactic affairs. Humans were recognized as adaptable, clever, and capable of achieving what no one else could. Yet Elias remained focused on his work. There were new systems to explore, new problems to solve, and more lessons to learn from the ancient ship. He understood that history was not made by a single victory, but by consistent effort, intelligence, and the courage to face challenges others deemed impossible. In the end, the moment inside the Axiom Crown changed history, not because humans had destroyed enemies or conquered worlds, but because a human had proven that understanding, ingenuity, and problem-solving could command even the most unmatched power in the galaxy. The galaxy would never be the same again, and neither would humanity. The stars shimmered outside the observation deck, endless, mysterious, and waiting. And inside the Axiom Crown, a human engineer and a living battleship prepared to face whatever came next, together.